The Love Life and Lose Weight podcast will teach you the art and science of changing your habits around food. If you know what to do, but can't figure out why you're just not doing it, this is the right podcast for you. I'm your host, Advanced Certified Weight and Life Coach, Heather Beardsley. I've helped hundreds of women just like you figure out how to think and eat like a normal eater, lose weight, and love life on the journey to goal weight and beyond. When stress increases, most women, their response is to negotiate what they do or don't do when stress increases. Think how your weight management would change if you didn't automatically believe and act that way when stress increased. What if, when stress happens, you didn't negotiate with the things that really matter to you and your weight management goals? Welcome to episode 112. Stress isn't what derails your progress. It's that stress changes usually what we give ourselves permission to do and not do when we feel stressed. This negotiation feels compassionate in the moment when things feel really shitty because of whatever kind of stress you might be going through, but the outcome is self-abandonment of your goals. This is why in my planner, I give you a time and tasks weekly planner. When we think about how we spend our time, right? There's prioritization that happens. So the most important things we can usually identify have immediate consequences. And the thing about weight management, right? Weight loss is that it doesn't have an immediate consequence, right? If you overeat today, sure, you might see the scale go up a little bit tomorrow. So in one way, that's not necessarily true. But certainly you're not getting on the scale as you're overeating, and you're not seeing the impact of that or any of those cumulative decisions until like maybe weeks later, sometimes months later, when you notice like a slow creep on the scale. And so weight management never really belongs in the it's a priority column of how you choose to spend your time, right? Getting your work report in before deadline is always going to come before your weight management goals. It's always going to be relegated to like, hey, when things feel good, right? We'll be able to shop and we'll be able to meal prep, and I will wait to see if I'm hungry. But if you are stressed and let's say you're an attorney and you have a court case and you are late for your case in the courthouse, how you're thinking about food is not going to be a priority. Whether you skip that meal or you overeat because you were late afterward, right? It's not going to be the priority. The thing with the immediate consequence is always going to be the priority. So this relationship between stress, which it has priority, right? And your weight actions is always going to have a difficult relationship. So what I'm talking to you about in this episode is how to negotiate less away when you're stressed, the things that affect your weight. And there's a way to do this, I promise. So it looks like this. When life is going well, you notice like you follow through. You plan your food. You take your walks. You eat enough protein. You can stop when you're satisfied. You take your medication. And then when things get really hard, I mean, let's face it, there's all kinds of things that come up week to week that can affect us. Suddenly, all of those things that you were doing before become negotiable, right? I mean, even a vacation is like such an easy example to use. Well, I didn't walk the whole week I was on vacation. Well, how come? Well, because I was on vacation. Really? I mean, do you want to be somebody who takes the priority of walking and easy, like enjoyable exercise away just because you're on vacation? I mean, maybe for some of you, that answer is yes, and you'll stand by it, and that's fine. But like for a lot of us, even in the best case scenarios, we negotiate away the things that we know are associated with managing your weight the way that you want to. So in this way, stress or even like pleasure in a case of a vacation isn't what destroys our goals. It's the incident that creates the circumstances under which we renegotiate what we do or don't do. And it's this renegotiation, that point, that I want to really hold your feet to the fire on today. Okay. So the negotiation that I'm talking about happens before the behavior itself. So take this example: stress goes up. And the immediate thing you do is you look for permission for how to make your life easier because you're stressed. And then your standards quietly change. You run through the drive-through, which you know always leads to overeating because you've got to now pick up something else and you don't have time to make it to your other appointment. And it just sounds sort of fatalistic when you think about it this way. And your future self and your goals the next week, when you look at your weight and what's happened, she pays the bill for this, right? This renegotiation. Notice the overeating part was not first, or skipping the workout isn't what happens first. It's the renegotiation part that you do when you think you have no other choices. And that's the place where I want to really have you look honestly at, like, maybe there's some other ideas of what you can do when you think you have to renegotiate your habits around food. So let's take an example from my coaching. So one of my clients has a adult child. I shouldn't, that's kind of redundant. An adult daughter who was going through an emotional crisis. And she, of course, was there for her daughter. She's a great mom. But after some of these phone calls, she was finding herself really upset and worried about her daughter. So what was happening immediately afterward was there was like a lot of renegotiation around how she ate when she felt so terrible and worried after these phone calls. So that was the renegotiation. I'll just eat to feel better because I feel so terrible and I feel so worried about my daughter, right? I think we can all relate to this. So what I suggested instead of this automatic renegotiation that has to do in the area of food is I said, let's create like a post-call protocol for like how you take care of yourself after you get off the phone with your daughter when things are really hard for her and you want to be supportive of her. Like, how are you going to take care of your nervous system? How are you going to get yourself more into a recovery area? How are you going to talk yourself through your worry based on, whatever you talk to your daughter about that day? So some ideas, just to give you some ideas, is to take an easy walk, to ground yourself, walk outside, take off your shoes, lay in the grass or sit in the grass, sit in the sun, maybe go down to the beach. She lives near the beach. And pause, do some breathing. Maybe you could even do one of your hobbies that you enjoy doing. And then, only then after that, would she consider whether or not she wanted to eat. In other words, what we did was we created this idea of like, I don't automatically move to food when I'm upset after my phone call. I allow myself to transition from being emotionally flooded after the phone call with my daughter. I give myself space to transition. I talk myself through it. I might journal. I might call a friend. I might just breathe. I might just go to the ocean. And I give myself some time to kind of recover from that before I allow myself to decide whether or not I want to eat. But I'm taking the option to eat right away from myself, because that's my seatbelt of safety. That's the thing that I really need to have my own back so that I'm not just giving up on my own goals because I want to support my daughter. And supporting my daughter has real effects on my physiology, on my emotions, right? So that's me as a coach helping her find ways to protect herself from making in the moment decisions inside a stressed and activated nervous system. That is the place at which she can increase the end result to be more favorable for her. It doesn't mean she'll never overeat. It just is a protocol and a structure that she can use to help her in those moments. So stress changes, right? Changes that we make, negotiations we make to what we would typically do because we're stressed. That always seems reasonable in the moment. And I want you to be onto yourself for this. Your brain becomes like a really effective like litigator. Like, no, you deserve this. Like, we had such a hard day. Oh, it won't count. I'll just start again tomorrow. This isn't forever. It's just for now. I really just need this, right? I just need a break. It's not irrational, but it's persuasive because you're sort of in a very impressionable place when we feel stressed. And you've got to find ways to have your own back when you are impressionable like that from stress. And I want you to create like a menu of items that you can use, strategies you can use, protocols you can use, structures that are in place that you turn to when you're in an impressionable, vulnerable state when you're stressed. I have another client who had gained weight after she had hosted people at her house. She also had a big trip coming like after she was hosting people. And, her schedule in this middle place between like hosting people and then leaving on this trip left her with like late meals, different routines. Like she wasn't eating the way that she was used to. And this had created, some negative results on the scale. And, how I worked with her, I didn't say like try harder or, why did you do that? Like, I understand why she did it. But I coach like, hey, when you are hosting people, let's work ahead to figure out meal timing and decide what your anchors are. Like maybe you just want to protect your breakfast instead of waiting for your guests to get up and they get up later, which then pushes your breakfast later, which means you're working out now without breakfast, which is then making you feel terrible because you're not fueled for your typical workout, which is a hard workout. You see, there's like downstream effects of different disruptions and different levels of stress, right? Like this is a very different kind of stress than the first example I used. But the negotiation that she was automatically giving to herself because she was hosting people in her home, I just wanted her to revisit some of those negotiations where she would have some minimum baselines of like things that she just doesn't negotiate on. And one of those was definitely like she's an early riser and she needs to eat before she works out really early in the morning, and she just is not going to give that up no matter who's staying with her. And it's just good to know from now on that like, and she can let her guests know like, hey, I get up early, I have breakfast, here's where y'all can find your breakfast when y'all wake up in the morning. And that leaves her like with so much more freedom to kind of go and pursue the kind of morning that is important for her to set in, even though much of the rest of her day is disrupted because she's hosting people. Okay. Planning reduces negotiations. So decide ahead of time what you want to plan, where are your minimum baselines, right? The things you don't negotiate, and then everything else is easier to negotiate because everything isn't being negotiated. Okay. The planner that I have helps you do all this. Everything is in the planner. You can plan your days. Like, this is why the daily plan of time for each day is right next to where your food is being slotted in, because what you choose to eat has to do with what you're doing during that time of day, and one will inform the other. So, if you're interested in the planner, I have a fall small seasonal planner coming out with just September, October, November, and December. So, you don't have to wait for the new year to get started with my planner. If you haven't gotten my planner yet, this is a great opportunity for you to get into it. And it contains my whole entire coaching structure in there, the worksheets, everything I teach about coaching with my private clients is in the planner, and you can get that for like a great price for the fall section of 2026, which should take you all, it takes you all the way to the end of the year. Okay. All right. Another thing you can do is to plan when we're talking about renegotiating under stress, your minimum effective day. This is very helpful to many of my clients. So that because, the truth is no one has a crystal ball, and a planner is not there because you have some perfectly clear idea of exactly how the day is going to go. Like, we never really know how your day is going to go. It's only ever a guess, which is a framework for your brain to use to create some structure, to meet those moments that you anticipate, your appointments, the cadence of your day with some idea of like how you'd like to show up. But regardless of that, sometimes there's some big interruptions in our day that we have no idea are going to come in. And we know this. So, a minimum effective day template asks us what success looks like if today, even if today completely falls apart. Maybe your success minimum baseline is I get in my 80 ounces of water. Maybe it's if I don't have my minimum of 90 grams of protein by the end of my day, I take my perfect aminos to get an extra 30 grams of protein even without having to eat again, right? Maybe it was like a carb or a pasta dinner. And you're like, no, when I'm reviewing my day at the end of the day, if I'm a little short of protein, I take my perfect aminos, right? That's a great tip, by the way. There's many amino acid supplements that don't have caloric impact that I use and recommend for my clients. So check them out. Um, Maybe it's a 10-minute walk. Maybe it's sticking to your bedtime no matter what happened that day. But, figure out what this is for you when you can say to yourself, no matter what kind of day I've had, what are the minimum things that I can do to make sure that I take care of me in just a basic minimum way? And when your day goes ass over tea kettle, you will have that structure to fall back on and feel good about. Like, look, today went to shit. I'm going to still take my 10-minute walk after dinner, and I'm in bed by 9:30. And, you chalk that up to like, okay, I did that. The rest of the day was shit, but at least I did that. I'm going to count that as a win. And psychologically, that's really important on days like that. Another coaching example of negotiating under stress is like emotionally eating with family dynamics that don't feel good. Having a travel protocol for when you are visiting family, like how you like to eat. Maybe you just say, like, when I'm with family, and my client did this recently, and it was like so successful. She was able to maintain her weight during the week that she was with her family. And it was because she allowed herself to have a slight overeat every evening she was with them at dinner. And that the rest of the meals, she would make sure that she waited to eat unless she was hungry, physically hungry, and that she was stopping at 75% full. And the effect of that was that she was able to be with some family members that are really difficult for her, and she was still able to maintain her weight. That's a huge win. Think about if that's the case for you when you travel or you're with people that are hard to like not overeat around for whatever reason, whether that's just celebratory or stress related or whatever it is, if you could be around them and just maintain your weight without gaining, imagine what that would do throughout the course of your year where you wouldn't have a setback. You wouldn't have a gain that you would then have to like work so hard to overcome and still be, reaching your weight loss goals. Makes everything infinitely easier. So that's another example. Your practical exercise for this week is to notice when stress comes in and you start to negotiate what your typical habits would be if you weren't stressed. I want you to ask yourself, what am I negotiating on? Maybe it's your peace by, getting into an argument. Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe you're giving up protein because it's easier to just give in to whatever somebody else wants to eat. Maybe it's letting your Pilates class go, um, or not doing the walk because your partner's like, I don't feel like walking tonight. Maybe it's your planning, when life gets busy. A lot of times, there's that moment at maybe midday and we're like, oh, I didn't plan my day. And that little voice is like, oh, it's too late anyway. It's like, no, like, what if you just said, whenever I realize I haven't made my plan, I go and I make my plan. And that's how I have my back. I don't negotiate that anymore. It's non-negotiable. Many of you do this with your movement. I know that you do because I often see, it's funny. I have some clients who are like, I just don't know, like I'm overeating because I'm like checking out with food. And I'm like, okay, well, how's your movement? And they're like, yep, every day I do it without fail. And I say to them, well, why don't you just do with your eating what you naturally do with your movement? Like in one case, you've made it non negotiable to just follow through and do what you intended to do. And with food, you don't. And like, why is that? And what is the difference anyway? It's just with one, you give yourself that escape hatch. And it's like, why? Look, it's fine to give yourself an escape hatch if it doesn't have negative consequences. But if giving yourself a negotiation or an escape hatch to overeat is in the way of you reaching your weight goals, you have to really look at that and ask yourself some hard questions like, why am I doing that? What is it? It's not like you can't eat. Of course you can eat. You're just negotiating the part around overeating. And like, what if you just said, I'm not doing that anymore? Sometimes we just really need to have the come to Jesus, just talk with ourselves about like, look, this is just in the way. I don't negotiate this anymore, especially if I'm stressed. Like overeating when I'm stressed feels so bad. It's not worth the extra calories or the supposed benefit that I sell to myself in that moment when I negotiate it. It's just not worth it anymore. I mean, that's what I did when I stopped drinking. I started looking at like the benefits of drinking, like this thing that I was always like negotiating, especially when I was stressed. Oh, one more glass of wine. It's like, why? It's extra calories. It makes me feel like shit. It takes away my sleep. Like, what is the benefit of doing this? I'm just believing it has benefits, but it actually doesn't. So, look at that. I don't think that successful women have fewer stressful days. They've just learned something different where when stress increases, they don't lower their commitment. They lower the complexity of what they do or don't do. They don't ask like, can I still have a perfect day or not? What they do though is they identify, how can I have the best of both worlds? How can I deal with the stress and not abandon my goals around my weight management? What's the smallest action that keeps me connected to the person I am moving toward becoming with my weight, right? Like, It's so few cases where you really have to let that go. We just give up too easily. And what I'm saying to you is stop giving up so easily. Stay committed to really asking yourself if you have to renegotiate what you're thinking you have to renegotiate when you feel stressed. Visit me on Instagram at Thrive in Midlife and let me know how you found the episode. And this week, work with yourself on your renegotiation and see if you can still get the best of both worlds. If you can deal with your life as stress comes in and you don't have to abandon what you want to do with your eating, where you don't have to give up the goals that you're working so hard to reach. You deserve that. Stay focused and so long. Hey, if this episode resonated for you, then let's connect. Visit hbeardsley.com/subscribe. That's HBEARDSLEY.com/subscribe and become a VIP subscriber. You'll learn how to work with me. You'll get 2 free gifts, access to exclusive VIP content, and get a discount on the digital follow-through planner.